Okay, so another term for an Excel file that you open up is a workbook. So what we have here is a workbook. And within a workbook in Excel, you can have multiple sheets. It's possible to have only one sheet, but you can see in this example that we've got multiple sheets. And we can obviously just click on each sheet at the bottom to move between them. Now, you can see the ones called Commission, Calculation, V2, Employee Data. One of the key things you need to note is that you can't really have the same name for two different sheets. So if this sheet is called employee data, it won't be possible for another sheet to have exactly the same name. Each name has to be different from each other. Now, to add another sheet to your Excel workbook, you simply click on this plus icon here. It says new sheet, and when I click on it, you can see it automatically names the sheets in some number. So it'll name them sheet 1, sheet 2, and so forth. Now, to move a sheet, you simply click on it, hold your left mouse button in, and you drag it to wherever you want to move it. So if I wanted to move it in between these two, you can see that little black arrow. Once I get to this point, I just let go of the mouse and it'll basically move. I can click and drag it all the way to the end. So that's the one way of moving a sheet. If you want to make a copy of a sheet, you can basically click on that sheet. So yeah, let's say we're going to make a copy of this employee data sheet. I simply right click on it and I go to this move or copy option, right? And it brings up this little dialog box and you tick on create a copy over there. And now you can actually at the same time indicate where you want the copy to be moved to. So what I'll do is I'll click on this move to end because I want to move it right to the end, and I say OK. Now you'll notice immediately that the initial sheet was called employee data, and the way Excel works is the copy of the sheet that it created will be called employee data, and in brackets 2. So it just adds the 2 in the brackets. And if we made a further copy of this, so if I right clicked and I said, okay, let's make another copy and also move it right to the end, that'll become employee data in brackets 3 and so on. Now, in order to delete a sheet, let's say I wanted to delete this employee data 2, I can simply right click on the sheet and choose the delete option over there. And once I click on that, it'll basically give me a warning that it's going to permanently delete the sheet. Do I want to continue? It's quite important to note that if you delete the sheet, now I've deleted it, the undo option doesn't work for this, right? So I can't undo it. So it's very important that when you do delete a whole sheet, it doesn't work like, if I delete, for example, some text over here, and let's actually just say, for example, we deleted all of those cells by pressing the delete button after highlighting them. If I then go and use the undo feature, and I'll just use the shortcut of Control Z, you can see it will return it. But deleting a sheet, there is no undo for it, so you need to be careful before you do that. That's why it's important to make regular backups of your files as well. Excel 365 within the cloud does have a feature where you can roll back to previous versions, but if you don't have that on, it can be quite a problem if you've deleted a sheet and then decide that you needed it later. So let's look now how we can actually rename a sheet. Let's say we have, for example, Encore wanted to rename this to employee data final. Instead of having this 3 on it, we can simply double click on it and immediately it becomes editable. Now I can click anywhere over here and I can, for example, press the backspace to delete that and I can rename it final. Or for example, if I double click on the sheet 2 and let's say I wanted to call it test, when I double clicked on it, I just type in the word test and it overwrites what's there. And let's put in the word test as well in the top over here, and you can see now it's effectively renamed. Another way to make a copy instead of just right clicking is if I've got the sheet selected and I keep my control key in and I drag it to another spot, the spot that I drag it to actually drags a copy of it. So you can see here's the original test, and now test 2, which also has the word test, it's an exact copy, is the copied version. So that's a shortcut using keeping your control key in and dragging to a new area that you want to make a copy of that sheet. You can also select more than one sheet at a go. So let's say I wanted to select all of these sheets from test all the way to test 2 because I wanted to, for example, delete them all in one go. So I click on the first sheet and then I keep my shift key in, and then I can click on the last sheet. And you can see now that they are all selected by looking at the color. If to unselect, to deselect, I just click on any other sheet out of it, and now they are no longer selected. It's just the normal sheet that's been selected over here. If all the sheets are not actually visible in this area over here, you'll see a little arrow. So you can see this left arrow over here. And this left arrow actually gave me some shortcuts. So if I use the control and a left click, it'll go right to the first sheet. And if I right click on this arrow, I can see all of the sheets in the workbook. Now you can see, for example, employee data is here, right, which is the second one, but this commission calculation V2 is hidden. It's actually on the left, and that's why the 3 dots are over there. So by right-clicking, I can jump to any sheet within the workbook. So if I wanted to, for example, activate sheet test 2, I just click on that and it would jump directly there. This isn't really an issue unless you have a file with a lot of sheets in it, but as you develop more complex Excel models, it's even possible to have, a file with, 30, 40 sheets, and even larger numbers. And in those cases, it becomes quite important of, being able to use this function such as right-clicking over here to jump to where you want to in the workbook. So coming back to just recapping on the shift thing, if I wanted to, for example, if I have the first one selected and then I highlight, let's say I clicked on the last one that I want to select while keeping the shift key in, I clicked on this last one, it would highlight all of these. Now, if I right-click on any one of them now, and I say I select an option like delete, it's going to delete all of these sheets because they're all selected. So that's just something important to note. I can also actually move them all in one go. So I can move all the selected sheets right to the end. So all of these here, for example, move to the end. If I say OK, you can see now they've all moved towards the end, and then the sheets that were previously on the right of them are now sitting on the left. The other function that's quite helpful in Excel is if you right-click on a sheet, you can give it a color, a tab color. So for example, let's say we chose a red. Now you can see this particular sheet is in red, and you can actually color code different sheets to mean different things in your Excel model. So for example, let's make this one green. So obviously there's no rules in terms of what colors you need to use. This is just purely for your own use. When you're dealing with a lot of different sheets, you may want to have certain categories in a certain color so that it's actually easier to view. Let's look at it. If I wanted to select the sheet called test and as well as this one called test 2, and I couldn't really use the shift key, because if I clicked on the shift key, if I clicked on the first one, and if I keep the shift key in and I click on test 2, it's going to select everything in between it as well. So remember, we said we can just click outside in order to ungroup these. This is referred to as grouping the sheets together. It's also possible to ungroup them by right-clicking on them and just saying ungroup, and you can see now they're not all selected. Now, if I want to select sheets that are not, if I want to select a whole lot of sheets but not all in a range where they're not next to each other, I can click on the first sheet. If I click my control key in, while keeping the control key in, if I click on the next sheet, you can see now test and test 2 are selected, but employee data final, which is in the middle, is not selected. So use your control key instead of the shift key if you need to select sheets that are not next to each other. And of course, we can right click on these and I could delete them, or let's actually move test and test 2 right to the end. So I go and I select right to the end, and there we go. You can see these two are right now moved to the end. Finally, if you wanted to select all the sheets, you could of course click on the one sheet at the end, go all the way to the very first sheet, keep your shift key in, and then click on the extreme left. So from the extreme left to the extreme right, to the first to the last, that would select everything. I'm just going to ungroup them and show you that another way you can actually do the same thing is you can click on any sheet over here, and once you're on that sheet, you just right click and you select all sheets. You can see the option at the bottom is to select all sheets, and if I clicked on select all sheets, it'll do the same thing. So when you have a lot of sheets, this could be a quicker way if you wanted to select each and every sheet. The final thing I do want to show you is if I click on any sheet and I want to do the move option or copy, remember we can click on this to create a copy, otherwise it just moves it. It's also possible to move a sheet out of the current file, the current workbook, into another workbook. So if you see, it actually says move the selected sheet to book, and if I click on this drop down, I can actually move it into a new book, which is a new file. This is an empty new file that will be created with only this worksheet in. So let's actually just do that with these two sheets. Let's say we wanted to move these two. So I click on the shift to select them both. I right click and I say let's move them out, and we're going to move them into a new workbook of their own, right? So currently the workbook we're working in is called 2.1 Workbooks and Worksheets. You can see the name here on the top. I'm now going to move it into a brand new workbook because we didn't have anything else open, and if I say OK, you can actually see it's now moved into a new workbook that Excel has named book 2. And if I go back to the previous file, so here in the bottom, so the way I can actually do that is if I go to view and I go to the switch windows over here, you can see these are the two files I've got open. Book 2 is the one workbook or file that I've got open, and if I click back onto this one here that was open, you can see test and test 2 are no longer there. They've basically been gone because we've moved them out of this file, out of this workbook, into that book 2 workbook. The one thing that you do need to be aware of, and later on, if you do have any formulas that are connected to those sheets that you moved out, those will be updated between workbooks. So just be aware of that you could have, those sheets could be referring to data within sheets in this workbook over here.